how to deal with the stress of running a business. I've had 16 different companies and I've worked with hundreds of people all over the world. We're going to go through 6 specific steps to help you. As entrepreneurs and business owners, we know that if we have a clear plan, anything becomes possible. And if you can have a clear plan, a clear process to create that plan, and a way to create clarity with your partner or spouse, you can drive to amazing heights. All right, so if you're wondering, hey, how is it that I can deal with the stress of running the business? I'm going to go through 6 steps. The first one, and this sounds really silly, but it is super important. When people are stressing, usually they're in a total reactionary mode. They're going from this to this to this to this to this, and the business is running them. They're not running the business. They're not running their organization. So the very first step is just to take a step back and breathe. Breathe and just start to do an assessment of where you are. All right, so that first step is just to break it. Break the habit of where you are, because your stress is a habit of sorts in many, many different ways. It's interesting that humans are the only animals on the planet that can put themselves into a state of fight or flight, high stress level, simply by thinking about it. If you think about it, a deer is out in the woods, bear chases it, deer freaks out, goes into fight or flight, runs away. 15 minutes later, deer lets it all go, grazing, everything's back to normal. Humans have that same ability to go into that fight or flight mode strictly by thinking about it. You can be at 3 a.m, looking at the ceiling, worrying about something, and you can go into that same place. Your levels of cortisol, all sorts of negative things start to happen, both to your brain and your body physically. And you aren't going to be nearly as effective as you can be. So the first step is to just step back, take a breath, and realize that maybe I'm in a reactive state. How can I start transitioning to a proactive state? Understanding that alone will help immensely in letting it go. The second is to do an assessment of where you are. Review what's going on. What are the challenges that we're really facing? And start to think about, is this real, or is this a perceived threat? Is it actual, or is it something that could be happening? There's a phrase, I used to be the king about worrying about stuff. I would get so wrapped around the axle on all these things that I couldn't control, and I would worry about what could happen. And I heard a phrase that the Special Forces use that I love. And it says, don't endure any pain until it happens. So don't endure any pain until it happens. And at the time, I was the king of enduring pain. I would go, what about this, or what about that, or oh my God, this, or oh my God. Now, it doesn't mean I didn't prepare, and I still do prepare, but I'm not going to worry about it anymore. Because I realize that if I'm worrying about something, if I'm giving it any energy at all, it's wasted energy. It has no value of any sorts. Now, I'll prepare, but then if something happens, great, I'll deal with it. If it doesn't, then I don't worry about it. But I realized I was spending about 90% of my energy worrying instead of being focused on actually doing the whatever the issue was. And then when something came and I pulled the trigger and I just did it, wasn't that big a deal, 90% of the time. So review where you are, and start to create that assessment. Just sort of step back. We've taken a breath. We're stepping back. Where is it where are we today? And make sure that you're not enduring any pain until something actually happens. Doesn't mean you don't prepare, but don't endure that pain until it actually happens. All right, the third thing is start to list out what are the challenges that you face. And more often than not, people are just like, oh, they get in this frantic worry phase. But if you just list everything out, and sometimes, you may have 50 things, that's okay. List all those things out there. And I've seen people do this with big Post-it notes, and put it on Post-it notes, then put it on the wall or put it on a glass door and start saying, okay, there's a lot here, but now there's no way I can possibly get it done. But at least it's cathartic getting it out. You start having a place that you're keeping it, that it's not going to fall through the cracks. Okay, fair enough. Then once you have that, the fourth step is to start to build a plan. And you can just take those Post-it notes and say, all right, I got to get this done first. This is my linchpin. Man, I get this done, and it's going to make these other pieces easier. Okay, we'll go to that. But start building that plan of where you need to go. I think I've got a residual COVID cough. I apologize. So we've gone through, you've taken a step back, breathe, realize that you're in a reactive mode. You want to transition to that proactive mode. Okay? You've reviewed where you are, and you're going to start letting go of the idea you're not going to endure any pain until it happens. Doesn't mean we don't prepare, but you're going to let that go. The next thing is you've listed everything out that you can think of that you need to do. That in and of itself, just getting it out is going to help. You know that it's not going to get lost. And then from that point, it's a matter of building a plan. How do we build a plan that says, all right, now we can start going after this one at a time? Now, maybe you've got a big project that's just turning into a shit show. Okay, do the same thing with just the one project. You can do this in whether it's the whole business or just a project or whatever the piece is. Now, once you list those things out, understanding that the three only three things we can leverage are our time, our talent, and our treasure, making sure that you maximize those in the greatest fashion. And it's been my experience that when business owners or leaders are feeling really stressed running the business, it's usually because there's a lack of time. As such, what I'm going to highly suggest you do is to start time blocking. What time blocking is it says you're going to stay laser focused on one thing at a time till you get it done. This means go dark, put your devices into airplane mode, put a sign on the door that says don't bother me unless the building's burning, and stay laser focused on doing those things for even if it's only an hour. But the more you can manage your time and stay focused on one thing at a time, the more effective you're going to be. There's a great book called The One Thing that helps explain how multitasking is a myth, how if you are in a deep cognitive state and even if your phone just buzzes, it'll pull you out of that cognitive state. Maybe you just check an email for 30 seconds. It's going to take you almost 3 minutes to get back into that same spot. Most people lose at least half their day in transitions, where they're bouncing from this and they're bouncing to this and they're bouncing from that and they're bouncing from this. Remember, our first step, we're transitioning from that reactive state to a proactive state. So if you say, all right, now I know I've got my priorities, I've got my list of things, I've built my action plan. Now I'm going to stay focused on this and hammer on this till it's done. This can work with emails. Working with emails or different communications. Check it in the morning, check it in the midday, and then check it in the evening. You don't have to check your email 37 times a day, I promise. It's a matter of transitioning to that proactive state. All right, and then the last thing with this, once you're starting to time block, you're doing this. I'm going to encourage you to embrace the time blocking piece as much in your private life as you do in the business life. Because if you're carrying all that business home, well, you're not being the best parent, the best spouse, the best you can be. If you're not sleeping well, if you're not letting stuff go, if you're not exercising, well, what that happens with this is that you end up making poorer decisions. You end up sliding down a negative path. So making sure that you embrace that you're one of the primary assets of the business and that you need to make sure that the decisions you're making are the best decisions you can be making. That when you're focused and you're time blocking, you're focused on what you're supposed to be focused on. You're driving the success on that. And candidly, when you'll have more fun at home, you'll be able to shake it off. So just when you leave the office, let it go. So the 6 steps in how to deal with stress of running a business are: number 1, step back and breathe. Understand that we want to transition from that reactive state to a proactive state, so break that cycle. 2, assess where you are. Really be clear and candid with it, but make sure you're not going to endure any pain until it actually happens. Figure out what those areas you need to work on and address it. List everything out, just that it's cathartic to get it out there, have it all listed. And then once you've done that, build a plan. Once you have your plan, what are the primary linchpins, first steps that we have to hit? Then dive in and time block and make sure you hit those things one at a time, but get them all the way done or move them as far forward as you can. And then lastly, let it go. When you're done for the day, embrace letting it go and have fun. Go home, time block, do some exercise, spend very quality time with the spouse or kids or whatever it may be. You'll get more out of life. And this will actually help you decrease all of the stress. So if you found any value in this, you have any questions, please feel free to reach out at aspiringsolopreneur.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, please subscribe, and thank you very much for watching. Keep smiling.